September 6, 2014, from Stanford Stadium in Stamford, Connecticut, was the number 14th ranked USC Trojans at the 13th ranked Stanford Cardinal. And what a game this was between Pac-10 rivals. Let's do the quick rundown of the scores. At the 4-minute and 26-second mark in the first quarter, Justin Davis had a 1-yard touchdown run to put the Trojans up 7-0. That would be it for the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, Stanford tied the game up at 7 apiece when Patrick Skov had a 2-yard touchdown run to make it 7-7. Then with 11 seconds left in the second quarter, Jordan Williamson had a 33-yard field goal to put Stanford up 10-7 as they took the 3-point lead into halftime. Then in the third quarter, as it was coming to a close with 53 seconds left, USC tied the game at 10 when Heidari had a 25-yard field goal to make it 10-10. Then in the fourth quarter, with only 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, Heidari hit his second field goal of the game. This one a 53-yard field goal that would put the Trojans up 13-10, and that would be the final score as USC goes into Stanford and upsets the Cardinal. So what a game this was. Kevin Hogan was 22 for 30 with 285 yards. Though he failed to throw for a touchdown, but he didn't turn over the ball with an interception, although he did have a fumble. There was a few fumbles, actually 2 fumbles for Stanford, and those fumbles were a big factor in them losing this game, as well as some missed field goals, as their kicker was only 1 for 3 from the field goal. Javorius Allen had 154 yards off of 23 carries for the Trojans. He was a big part of their win. Justin Davis had that touchdown. He only had 20 yards, though, on 8 carries. So that touchdown definitely was a big difference. It was the only touchdown for USC as they scored their other 6 points off of field goals. Nelson Aguilar had 91 yards with 9 receptions for the Trojans. Montgomery had 9 receptions and 83 yards for Stanford. He also had 69 yards off of 3 kick returns and 44 yards off of a punt return. So Montgomery was busy. He actually had 4 carries, but lost 7 yards rushing. But let's go more in depth in this game to really see what happened. Stanford, on their first possession of the game, got all the way down to the USC 32-yard line. They went for a 49-yard field goal and they missed. So right there, they were within scoring range. They actually had gotten all the way down to the 21, but then penalties brought them back. They missed that long field goal. USC on the next possession was able to capitalize. They got all the way down the 1-yard line, and then Justin Davis punched it in to put the Trojans up 7-0, as we told you earlier. Stanford on their next possession got all the way down to the USC 13-yard line, but then they fumbled. They did recover, but they lost 16 yards on the play, and that put them back to where they ended up having a punt. So instead of going for a long field goal, Stanford ends up punting. USC would end up having a punt as they went 3 and out, and Stanford got the ball back. This time they drove all the way down, and that's when they got their lone touchdown of the game, when Patrick Skov had that 2-yard touchdown run. And on the next possession, the Trojans would end up having a punt. Stanford got the ball back, and they ended up getting a field goal. So they ended up capitalizing there. That would bring us to halftime. USC got the ball back, but they just let the clock run out. So at halftime, Stanford was up by a field goal. USC on their first possession of the second half would go 3 and out, as they would end up punting to Stanford. Stanford then would march downfield. They got all the way down to the 9-yard line with some big plays, but they weren't able to capitalize as Jordan Williamson missed another field goal. It was his second field goal missed of the game. This time it was a chip shot, just 26 yards. So that was a big factor in their loss. They only lost by 3 points. Then their next possession, as you'll see, that was a factor as well. As USC would end up punting the ball back to Stanford. they didn't really move the ball on their next drive. So Stanford, on their next drive after having gotten that field goal on the drive earlier, would get all the way down to the USC 3-yard line, and they went for it on 4th and 1, but they weren't able to get the first down, and they weren't able to get any points because instead of going for the short field goal, they weren't confident in Williamson as he missed a chip shot along with a long field goal. It was only 1 for 3 at this point, so they said, you know what, we're going to go for it on 4th and 1 on the 3-yard line, and they didn't capitalize. They weren't able to get the first down, so they got shut down right there. They didn't get any points out of that drive, even though they drove so deep into the Trojans' territory. So they walked away from that one without any points. They were only up by a field goal, and USC used the momentum to tie up the game, as that's when they got the 25-yarder that tied it up at 10-10 on their next drive. So now Stanford got the ball back with the tie score, and this is when Kevin Hogan fumbled. He was looking really good in this game, but right here he made the mistake, and USC, as they forced that fumble, and that right there would put the ball back in the hands of the Trojans. They didn't end up actually scoring off of that turnover. That drive brought the third quarter to an end. They opened it up the fourth with the ball. They would get somewhat within scoring range as they got all the way to the Stanford 35, but they went for it on 4th and 5 instead of going for a long field goal, as neither team really seemed to be too confident in their kickers at this point in the game. Stanford then would march all the way down into USC territory on their next drive, but an illegal block would push them from the 23-yard line back to the 38 and make it 3rd and 19 instead of 3rd and 4, which led to 4th and 13 and of course a punt. So USC got the ball back now with the tie game. They drove the ball, having gotten it on their 7-yard line, their own 7, back into their own territory, drove all the way downfield to the Stanford 35. And this time they put the faith in their kicker, and he came through, Heidari. I hope I'm saying that right. He kicked a 53-yard field goal, and he put the Trojans up 13-10 at this point with just 2.5 minutes left in the game. So tons of excitement. Now Stanford got the ball back, and they had a chance to win this one, as they would drive deep into the Trojans' territory all the way to the 22. Then Kevin Hogan got sacked by Leonard Williams for a 3-yard loss on 2nd and 3. So it was 3rd and 6, and Hogan was sacked for the second straight play. And this time it was J.R. Tabe, and this was a loss of 1. Hogan fumbled, and it was recovered by USC. Scott Felix came up with the huge recovery, and that was all. As the Trojans took over with just 19 seconds left, they ended up taking the knee, letting the clock run down, and it was 13-10 the final score. As the Trojans go into Stanford, and they beat the Cardinals. So you can see some sloppy play by the Cardinals, some missed kicks, some fumbles. The Trojans' defense just stood strong. Stanford's defense played great too. Thanks for listening, and let us know what you think in the comments below. And make sure to hit the like button and subscribe.